Okay. Watches can feel confusing. Luxury brands, hype, materials, movements, resale value. Sometimes it feels like you have to even get permission to enjoy the watch you're going to buy, but you don't. This is meant to be a no fuss guide to watches, no hype, no pretenses, no judging, just the pure, straight up truth about watches and what to look for and how to buy them. At the end of the day, a watch is just a small object on your wrist that tells you the time and maybe tells you or others a little bit about the taste and style that you like. Some people love watches because of the mechanics of the watch. Some people love watches because of the style that it has. And some people, like myself, wanted to get away from smartwatches because they connect you too much to your phone and just endlessly doom scroll somehow off your wrist. All of it's valid. If a watch fits on your wrist, tells you the time, and makes you happy and you enjoy wearing it, that's the perfect watch for you. Everything else is optional. Price, bragging rights, luxury brands, resale value. That doesn't really matter if you're just enjoying the watch for what it is. First thing to explain is movements inside of a watch. The movement is the actual mechanical or electrical part inside of the watch body that runs and tells you the time. There are two main types of movements that you can find inside of watches. There's quartz, which is battery power, and then there's a mechanical watch that is automatic, so self-winding, or hand-wound. Yes, there's lots of types of subsets within those: kinetic, combinatory, anything else like that, but we're just going to focus on two main ones for this beginning session. First, quartz watch, or watches that are ran with a battery. Quartz watches are extremely affordable, they're practical, low maintenance, they don't require checking every single day if they have complications. So if you have watches that have complications such as a day, a date, time of the week, moon cycle, any of those type of complications, quartz watches you can set and forget. You don't have to check it every day. You don't have to hand wind it, automatic wind it every single day. These are great watches for practical uses. There's nothing wrong with quartz watches, although a lot of people online might want you to think that quartz watches are cheating watches, not true watches. Quartz watches are a great affordable alternative to a lot of those more expensive mechanical watches. And then the second is mechanical watches. Those are powered by a spring within the watch that releases energy and then puts that into the gears, or as we call them, wheels. So there's no battery in these. The spring that provides the energy can be powered two ways depending on the type of watch. An automatic has an oscillating weight in it, so as you move your wrist around, the weight moves and that winds the spring. Or you have a hand wound watch where you just physically wind the spring through the crown on the watch. Unlike a quartz watch, which can last for several years on a single battery or longer, mechanical watches require winding of the spring constantly compared to quartz watches. Typically, mechanical watches have to be wound every 30 to 60 hours depending on the style of watch and typically off of its price point. But 40 hours is a typical estimate of a single wound of the watch. People, including myself, like mechanical watches because the amount of engineering intricacies and they just feel more alive within the watch. Especially if you work on them and you get into watch repair, you really start to see the craftsmanship that are built into these. But again, quartz watch, mechanical watch, all comes down to preference and even intended use for each person. So I think after you decide what your preference is, battery powered quartz or mechanical, automatic or hand wound, or some of those ones I kind of mentioned that sit in between those, I think you can start looking at watches based on those. If you have no preference, more power to you. You have a lot more watches to look at. Then I think the second thing to get into is age of watch. Typically when you look online, you see vintage or new watches. I think as watch collectors, whenever we hear a new watch, we think probably within the last 5 or 10 years. However, if you look back at where some of the intricacies come in with sapphire crystals, better stainless steel, better materials built into the watch, I think any time since probably early 2000s until now, you start to see really high quality watches that can last a very long time. And I would still consider these newer watches. Not to say to my fellow millennials that anything before 2000, i.e. the 90s, is vintage. But when you look back at then, a lot of these watches are just made in a different style. It doesn't mean they're vintage and old. It just means they're made both mechanically different and visually in a different style than what we typically have today. Now, there are a lot of newer brands that bring the 90s, 60s, 70s, 80s, all those vintage watches into the world that we have today with sapphire crystals and higher quality materials, especially in the micro brand and Chinese homage market. But a lot of people, including myself, like the older style of vintage watches, and the wear and the patina that come along with those kind of tell a story about themselves as the watch. The way I see it with new watches, you typically know where it comes from, especially if you buy it directly from the manufacturer. You have a warranty that comes with it. You know the exact materials and exactly what you're getting into. However, I think a lot of watches today, like cars, kind of fall into the same avenue, and you're just kind of changing logos in between one another. I think as you move into the vintage watches, you start to see a lot more discerning qualities between different brands throughout the world. And sticking with the car theme, a lot of these watches that you buy brand new, oftentimes you can get them for cheaper on the secondary market because their depreciation kicks in rather quickly. And when you're looking at vintage watches, you already have that kind of hit the max of what you typically would see for depreciation. So you're buying the watch at its actual value. And although vintage watches have more character to them, sometimes more unique designs or vintage designs that a lot of people like, it comes with some issues as an older watch, especially if you're looking into the 50s, 60s, 70s. One, for the bigger people like me, they're often a lot smaller. 36 is oftentimes the max that you get out of the case diameter for watches that are that old. And for mechanical watches, it gets a little dicier because you don't know the service history of the watch. You don't know how well it's running, how well it's keeping time. And if you do require service for that, it could be a couple hundred, even to a couple $1,000s of work from a watchmaker. Quartz watches, however, are a little bit easier. Oftentimes the eBay listing, the Chrono24 listing, Facebook Marketplace, wherever you buy these vintage watches from that are quartz, usually they show if they are ticking or not. And with a quartz watch, a very high likely that if it's ticking, it's keeping the time it should be. But with mechanical watches, even if they are ticking, you can have vastly different amplitudes or the strength of how well it's ticking, or you can even have changes in the daily rate. So you could have a watch that looks like it's running, but it's actually losing 5 or 10 minutes a day. So again, neither is superior. I prefer vintage watches because of the charm and because of the history that comes often with them. But I do have some new watches that I also really love because they have those high quality, untouched materials. I think naturally the next part is, if you like the style, you have to know how well it will fit on your wrist. This is a very touchy subject. People love to call out hand watches or watches that are the size of a dinner plate on your wrist. Some people would like to call out watches that are too small. Again, it's personality and it's your own personal preference. If you like a big watch, wear it. If you like a small watch, wear it. If you like a loose fitting bracelet that slides down your arm or slides up your arm, wear it. Who cares? It's your watch. However, I think there are a couple of key points to look out for if you are shopping for watches. I think the first is, if you haven't really tried any watches on or you don't have much experience, I think it's best just to go to a store and try on watches yourself. You need to find out, do you like leather straps? Do you like flexible straps? Do you like metal straps? All of those things come in with a watch. And yes, you can change out the straps, but I think a lot of the styles kind of go with each other. On newer watches, if you're looking, see if you can find, again, one in the store. Maybe the bracelet isn't what you're expecting. Same thing with the case size, both diameter and lug to lug. Try those on, see how they fit on your wrist. Maybe you find a 34 millimeters too small, a 36 is perfect, 38 is too big. So you start narrowing down your watch search to those 36 diameter watches. On the reverse side of things, maybe you look and you don't really have a preference. You're fine going down to 32 and you're okay going up to 42 millimeters. More power to you. And as far as movements go for watches, again, when you're looking at new and vintage watches, they will list typically what is in the watch. If it's a quartz watch, there's a very high likelihood that you don't have to worry about the movement inside. Most quartz movements are extremely reliable and mass manufactured, so it's probably one of the big names. For mechanical watches, again, the vintage sometimes takes a little bit of hunting, but just take your time, look up online. If it comes from a reputable seller, then you know you're probably in good hands and it's probably keeping good time. I will post a video in some time within the next couple of weeks that will go over vintage watch hunting, specifically online, so you can see for yourself how I look at watches, how I determine which ones are worthwhile and what red flags I'm looking for. But to recap, there's three main questions to answer when you're looking to buy a watch. One, does it fit properly? Do you like how it fits? Number two, is the style your style? Do you like how it looks? And number three, does it work for the purpose that you want to get out of that watch? I think if you think about those three questions and answer yes to each of them, it's probably the right watch for you. As you start moving through your watch collection journey, you'll start to find these niche little outlets within watches. You'll start to go down these paths and you'll find watches that you didn't even know were available to you. And then I think from there, that will start to make the questions you ask yourself to buy or to not buy a little bit more complicated. But these are great three simple questions to ask yourself before you buy your first watches. Watches don't have to be intimidating. You don't have to give into the hype. You don't have to spend a lot of money for watches. You can find amazing watches at every single budget level. The watch just needs to make sense for yourself. In future videos, we'll go deeper into these topics, such as finding vintage watches online, looking at what type of movements there are, how to discern if a movement is good, how to know if a watch is fitting correctly on you, a lot of other details with no gatekeeping. If you like this video and you want to see some more of this content, make sure to hit subscribe. Let me know in the comments if anything resonated with you or if you have any questions at all about watches or watch collecting. And as always, when you go to buy your next watch, I'm sure you'll tell yourself, this time it's different.